Hello everyone. This is my second video on using the GIMP to help with creation of the dynamic line of sight blocking lines in Roll20. My first video, Roll20 Dynamic Lighting with the GIMP, was making a basic dungeon, really nothing more than lines on a grid, but using those lines, as I will also show you here, to create an SVG file that can be used on the Roll20API.net site to generate dynamic line of sighting layer for you automatically. Note, using this requires access to the Roll20 API, thus a pro subscription. The GIMP, GNU Image Manipulation Program, is a free yet powerful graphics editor along the lines of Photoshop. In this video, I will use many of the same techniques as in the first, but we'll throw a few more in. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing I'm going to do is create a new layer for the grid to see if we can match up a grid to the actual map that we have. So I'm going to go to right click on the layer that I want to create a new layer above, and I'm going to call that grid. Hit OK. Now the next thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to zoom in on an area where I can actually see the grid pretty well. So I'm going to zoom in at 400%, and I'm going to just scroll over here. I can see the grid really well here. Now I'm going to take and select the measure tool, which is the little compass over here. And I'm going to try to go on a horizontal line. I'm going to try to line up as close to dead center on this line and draw a line. Make sure this stays as a straight line, and then release the mouse button on the other side. This will take a second, and it will actually come down and show you the number of pixels that line is. All right, so 72 pixels. If you don't get it right away, just click on the toolbox in an empty area. I think that might do it, but we're going to say that's 72 pixels. Now I'm going to go ahead and record that because we're going to need that in a moment. We're also going to use that in Roll20. I'm going to do the same thing here, and hold the button down, Scott. Get in the middle, come down. Now you can see it actually will also measure angles for you. I don't care about the angle, I just want to know the length of the line. And yes, definitely click in the open area on the toolbox and it will show you. Now this is saying 73 pixels. I can see I'm a little low on this side, so I'm going to assume right now that my grid size is going to be 72 by 72. The grid in Roll20's default is 70 by 70, so when we go to align this map in Roll20, we're going to be able to use those numbers to get it to line up perfectly inside of Roll20. Now that I have that, I'm just going to make sure my grid layer is selected, and I'm going to click on Filters, and then I'm going to click on Render, Pattern, and Grid. Now, I've already done this once, so my numbers are already set at 72 by 72. Also go and set your offset to 0 by 0. That's going to be important. You want it to start in the upper left corner, just like it does in GIMP or Roll20. And then I also set the color to the old school TSR module map color of the HTML notation that gets you pretty close to what that was, is 40B2. I'm sorry, 4082BD. Go ahead and hit that, hit OK, hit OK, and it generates your grid, and you can see that the grid stays aligned throughout the map. That is perfect. Next thing I'm going to do now is just go ahead and revert my zoom back out to the 67% in this instance, so we can now start drawing in our line of sight blocking. Okay, now I want to create a new layer for the walls. So I'm going to click on the map layer. And the reason I do this, again, is because when you create a new layer, it always goes above the active layer that has been selected. Now that we have that, I'm going to set my brush color to yellow. Again, any high contrast color works well here. I'm going to use yellow just because. Now I also want to come up and click View and set Snap to Grid. This is just going to help align the cursor as you are drawing out your lines to the grid, make it a little more consistent. Then I'm going to click on the rectangle select tool, And I'm going to go ahead and start drawing out my rectangles. So I'm going to go ahead and draw this one out first. Now you notice I'm ignoring the angles, and we will come back and get those angles a little bit later. We'll hit Edit and Stroke Selection, and then I'm going to set it to 1 pixel and hit Stroke. Now you don't necessarily see anything there because the marching ants are still there, but I'm going to come up here now. I'm going to just grab these corners, and I'm going to draw in this section here. I'm going to bring this down just a little bit more because when we draw in that angle line later, I want it to make sure it overlaps on this. So I'm going to do that, Edit, Stroke Selection. Another reason, the big reason you want to have these overlaps is on Roll20, when these dynamic line of sights out there, you don't want to have any gaps for light from your characters to accidentally shine through and show parts of the map that they really should not see. I'm going to go ahead and pause the video here, draw out the rest of the rectangles, and then come back and we will continue. All right, I am back. All the rectangles have been stroked. One thing I like to do is turn off the map layer for a moment and just go through and see if there's anything out here where there are any gaps that might break the line of sight. And it doesn't look like it. It looks like we're pretty good. You'll see right here, I actually went back and redrew a portion of it. I'm going to have to clean this up anyway, so that's not a big deal. We'll come in and clean that up here in just a second. I'm going to turn the map layer back on, and I'm also going to hit Control Shift and A to get rid of all of the currently selected areas. And I am going to then go and start utilizing the pencil tool. Now, it's important when you're using the pencil tool, I like using this hard brush. Don't want to use any of the soft brushes, use the hard brush. And that's going to be so you have one good solid line for everything. The next thing I'm going to do is you want to go to the area where you want to start drawing in. In this case, we're going to start with the diagonal lines. Now, what you can do, if you want to be more precise when you do this, is again, go back and zoom back in onto the area. Now, that's a pretty big zoom that I did there to 400%. And it might be just a little bit too big to get this whole thing in here. Now, you can always start drawing and then utilize the scroll wheel on the mouse to maneuver the map around. Here, this actually looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead, now that I've got this area in, I'm going to go and click in an area just outside of the junction where the two yellow lines meet up. And then I'm going to hold down my Shift key, and you can see what that does. It creates a perfectly straight line. And I'm going to go back to the next area where I want that line to go to. And I'm going to go ahead and click. Now, it's also important I've set my brush size to 1. And that's because I don't really want big, thick lines for this. I just want a brush size of 1, so we generate thinner lines. Now, I'm going to go ahead and pause here again and do the other angles and come back when they are done. Okay, so I finished the diagonal lines, and you'll notice that I went a little too far over here on this one, and that's fine. I'm going to use my rectangle select tool, and I'm going to come up here, and I will delete that line. And then I'll do the same over here because, again, I went a little too far, which was fine. Better to go too far than not far enough because you can always go back in and clean it up. You can always extend it as well, but I prefer going in and cleaning up a little bit as needed. I'm going to revert my zoom back out to the 67% again. And again, we can turn off the map. You can see where all of your lines are now. So the next thing I want to do is I want to start cleaning up the lines where the doors are, where open areas are, and then we will create another layer to draw those back in. So first thing I will do, I still have my rectangle select tool on from when I deleted those other lines. I'm going to come in here and select that area. Now, what's important to do when you do this is click on select and shrink, and then shrink by 1 pixel. Now you can't really see it there. It did do the shrink. And that's important because you don't want to delete the actual wall lines in this process. You want to make sure those wall lines stay there. So doing that shrink will preserve those wall lines. So now you can see if we zoom back in here and take a look at this, I'm just going to zoom into 200%. It'll be a little faster and easier to get there. And for some reason, my scroll wheel right now does not want to work for me. But you can see that that line has now been deleted. We can do the same thing here. Again, go there, select, and shrink by 1. And then just simply hit your delete key. I'm going to revert the zoom back out again. Now, in some cases, you may want to get multiple areas cleaned up. So over here, for example, I've got a line, 2 lines here that I no longer want to have there. So I'm going to go ahead and draw in my select tool as normal. I will shrink by 1 again and delete, and they're gone. I'm going to go ahead and do more of this, put the video on pause, and bring you back as soon as I'm done. Okay, before we go on to doing the doors, I'm going to do a couple of additional things for line of sight blocking that I just want to get out there for these pillars that are down here. Not the feet. The feet are just part of a statue that has been destroyed and is long gone. But these pillars, these 6 pillars that are there are going to block line of sight as well. So what I like to do is just draw a cross through the pillars. So I'm going to go back over to my pencil tool, and just to get some better precision, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in back down to 400%, and we will come in and draw these in. Now, I have opted to have these lines on here for line of sight blocking on these walls here. Don't really know if they're supposed to go all the way up to the ceiling or not. So I'm just going to assume that they are. They're going to be blocked mostly by the pillars in any event. So what I will do is I will not go all the way to the edge of the pillar, but I will go to the pillar, click in one area. Again, I'm not going to go all the way out to the edge, and click again to draw. Oops, that did not do it. So I'll be right back. My pencil tool is acting up. Let me make sure I don't have anything selected. I'm going to hit Shift-Control-A to make sure nothing is selected. That is a lot of the times the culprit when you cannot draw in an area where you expect to. It is still not drawing. It could also be because of the grid. Aha! Since I was lined up perfectly on the grid is going to be above the walls, so it's not going to show that there. Perfect. So then what I'm going to do, I'll go ahead and turn the grid back on and go ahead and draw in the rest of these lines, just knowing that that is what's happening to me. All right, so that's 1. And I will go ahead and draw the rest of these in and be right back. Okay, gang, one more thing to do if you want to is draw in the coastlines here. Now, for the coastline, you could just come up here and draw a straight line across because there's really nothing to be shown. But I am going to actually draw the coastline in. I'm going to zoom in again to 400%. Let's come down to the bottom. And let's scroll over. I'm going to move my layers and brush tool down a little bit. And then again, I'm just going to overlap a little bit. And then I'm using the pencil tool. But this time, I'm just freehand drawing it. It's not going to be perfect. That is actually fine because it's coastline. So it doesn't really need to be perfect here. Draw it all the way out to the edge of the map. And I'm going to go back over to the other side And this one is a longer coastline. I'm going to need to move my toolbox here down. So what I will do is I will start again by the dock, overlap it just a little bit, just draw it in, don't worry about straight lines coming up anywhere. All right, now I will go ahead and slide this over, come back and grab again, and just start drawing. Again, does not need to be perfect here. It's more of a natural coast area. It's actually a big stone island in the middle of this lake. Okay, I have that done. Let's go ahead and revert our zoom back out again. Revert zoom. All right, so now I have all of my walls drawn in. The next thing I'm going to want to do is create some doors. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new layer. You guessed it, I'm going to call it doors. And I'm going to draw in all of the areas here that are supposed to be doors. I'm going to actually change my color to red. You'll see I match these colors up also in Roll20. Just a little bit of a personal preference. So this area here is going to be a secret door. Because I'm want to match up to the walls directly again, I'm going to zoom back in to my favorite 400%, and we'll slide over, and we will come up. Now, I will actually do something along these lines. I'll make a little handle coming down here, and you can do this in areas that you can, and in areas that you can't, don't worry about it. I'm going to draw there. I actually want to get that up just a touch more. And then I'm going to come across. And again, I'm just going to overlap. Now, you see, I don't like that. I don't like the way that it did not match up directly on the top of that line because this is a secret door. If it was a regular door, I really wouldn't care. But I want it to be a secret door. So I'm going to come over like this. And again, that does not line up. I'm trying to get right in the middle of this yellow line, but the snap to grid is preventing me from doing that. So I'm going to try to come over a little bit more. It's interesting, the snap to grid won't let me do that. So that's okay. I'm going to go ahead 1 pixel here. The characters will probably never be able to notice, but because it's a pixel off, and that's not straight, that's not straight. It doesn't have to be perfect. I want it to be as close as possible. And then I'm going to just go ahead and take it down like that to block off that line. Now, I'm going to need to do the same thing for all of my other doors. If you have an area that you can do it with, actually, let me undo that. I want to make my little handle here. Because I know they can't get into this room in any other way than coming from the main chamber, I can do this no problem. Again, I'm going to go and cross over my other lines, and we will continue to do this for all of the doors. I'm not going to make you watch me go ahead and put all of these doors in, so I will pause it here and be right back. All right, I'm done putting in all the doors and everything. I'll go ahead and revert my zoom back to the full outside. You can see the red lines. You can see them better if I turn the map off. It's kind of hard to see them even with just the basic pattern back there. Okay, so I've got all of this now. So now what are we going to do to make the dynamic line of sight? The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the walls layer. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to click on the fuzzy select tool, this little magic wand up here. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to click in anywhere that's just white space in the map. And you can see it will have gone in. Oh, now, looking at this, you can also see another issue that I have, and I didn't delete these lines here from this corridor. So I'm going to hit Control-Shift-A. I'm on my walls layer. I will zoom in 400%, favorite number, and we will scroll down to that section of the map. And sure enough, you can see I did not go in and delete that. So, not a problem. I'm going to use the lasso select tool here. What this is going to let me do is similar to what we do with the pencil tool. I'm going to click in an area that I'm going to start with. I'm going to hold down the Shift key. Actually, you don't even need to hold down the Shift key. And just click off to another area. And then go around the whole area. Don't have to be nice and clean as you do this. And then click back into the original area to do that selection. Now with that selection, go ahead and hit, oh, what did I do? Let me do a Control-Shift-A, escape out of that. On the walls layer, because I had done the Shift key, I'll come up and close it. Now it's dancing lines. That's what I want to see. Delete that. There's a little bit of extra line there. I am going to go ahead and delete that also. Just being a little more careful on my selection. Delete that. Delete. Control-Shift-A. All my lines are still intact. Great. All right, let's zoom back out. And I'm going to select the fuzzy select tool again and click in there. Now you can scroll around your map a little bit just to make sure it's looking good. If there's any area that looks like it did not get selected because it is completely closed off, and you can see this area over here is because there is a yellow line closing off over here, and there's no other way for it to go in. Easy enough to select that is hold down your Shift key with the fuzzy select tool still enabled and click on it, and now you'll see we've got the dancing lines there as well. You will notice also that the dancing ants do go out to the edge of the map on all locations here. And so I don't want those lines there on that edge of the map down here. Didn't get it up here because there's no way for it to get into there, but I don't want it down there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a select and invert selection. So now only the wall lines and the other line of sight blocking lines are selected. What I'm going to do with this is go hit select and to path. And you'll see it had done some processing down at the bottom, and now we've got the selection, which is our path. I'm going to take this, and first thing I want to do is double click it so I can rename it. I'll rename it walls. Now I want to come back over to the layer tab again, and I want to go back and I want to do the doors. I'm going to hit Shift Control A. Again, I don't want anything else selected. I'm going to use the fuzzy select tool again. And this time when I do the fuzzy select tool, it's only going to go and create the outline around the doors, but it also gets to the border of the map. So again, I want to do a select invert. You could also use the select by color tool. I'll show you that. Select by color, and then you have to line up directly on the color you want to select. And same concept, same thing as doing the fuzzy select invert, because these are just spotty out and around the different areas of the map. So I've got all of those. We will do a select to path. Come back over to the paths. I'll rename this doors. Okay. Now I'm going to want to go in and save these as SVG files. To do that, you're going to right click and export the path. Now, I'm going to actually go into a different location. We will go into the Isle of Dread here. And actually, this is not where I want to be to save these right now. So I'm going to come back to my OneDrive folder. And it does not want to go back any further than that. So what I will do instead is click over here. And then I am going to go to OneDrive, GIMP Map Tutorials, and I will create a new folder if it will let me. So because this is designed for, originally designed for Linux, some buttons don't work quite as you would like them to. So I'm just going to go ahead and save it in here. I'll worry about moving these around later. And I will save this as, actually, we'll call it X1 Temple Level 1 Doors. And I'm going to put .svg. You don't have to put the extension in there. I do like having the extensions on there just because it makes them pop out as to what they are. You can do the same thing with the walls. Export path. And now this time it kept the folder that I was in, so that's good. I'm going to click on that just as a little bit of a cheat. Oops. This is going to be walls. Save. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to go into my web browser. And when I do that, I've already loaded this map into Roll20. You do need to make sure that you have the walls selection API script added in. So if I go back to roll20.net and I come into my Roll20 tutorials, I will show you API. I have the walls already added. If it's not there, click on the drop down here and then go down to Dynamic Lighting and then Walls. Now it's not showing up here because I already have it added in. So you want to make sure that you add the walls script. We will go to roll20api.net, and this is where we're going to generate all those line of sight blocking rules. So what we need to do is choose a file name. So we're going to go back here. I'm going to go ahead and grab my walls first. Okay. And then I am going to change the color. Again, I like making my walls yellow. And I'm going to change the stroke width to 2. Just going to go ahead and use 2 because it just makes it a little bit more apparent. And because we only had a stroke width of 1 on the SVG, this will just make it a little bit more apparent. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Parse. It generates all of these lines of code here. Now, what you want to do is copy those. Go back over to Roll20. It's very important that you are on the background layer, and you need to select your map. Now, what I had done, I had already gone ahead and done this earlier, so I'm just going to go ahead and change the dimension here a little bit. Boom, it's off dimension. Going to come in, align to grid, and I'm just going to click because I already know I want to type in 72 pixels by 72 pixels, what we had gotten before. Align to grid, and now you can take this and try to get it lined up if need be. And you can see, oops, you can see that it's not actually lining up perfectly right now. Why is that? That's a good question. It was aligned perfectly just a minute ago. So I'm going to make sure that I am aligned back into the corner. Okay. And I will also go in and zoom in. Now that 72%, or that 72 pixel by 72 pixel should have worked just fine. But if not, I can go ahead and find the grid that is out here, right? And then I can do the whole align to grid again. So let's click advanced, align to grid. come in and select your 3x3 area. 3, 2, 3 area. And it's really showing me that something is off. So I'm going to go ahead and align. Okay, now we can see that we're lined up good. Again, it's not always an exact science depending on the map. Now, the maps that you create manually should all line up very well as long as you set your grid size to 70 by 70 in the GIMP. But we are all aligned properly now. So now, very important that you're on the background layer, click on the background image. And then over in the chat window, you want to paste what you had copied. Doesn't look like it did anything, does it? It actually did. Let's come over here and look at the dynamic lighting layer now. And unless I had an error, let me go back over to map and background. Got it selected. It didn't actually, you notice, it didn't tell me, like you can see up here from my last time I did this, it didn't tell me that the walls had finished. So I'm going to paste. Okay, now it's saying the walls have finished. So now we can come over to dynamic lighting and you can see that the lines are all there. I think that was just a lag because of the busyness of Roll20 right now during this during the coronavirus crisis. Everyone's playing on Roll20. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in, I'm going to select the doors this time. I'm also going to change my color to red. And then I'm going to go ahead and parse that file as well. Click on the text, copy it, come in, make sure you have the wall layer selected. If you don't, you will get an error that you have to have it selected. So I will select it. I will paste this in here. All right. Now, even though it says walls is finished, it's actually doors. You can see we now have all the red lines in for the doors. Something else that I want to do, because this map is originally drawn at a scale of 1 grid square equaling 10 feet, I want to change this to 1 grid square equaling 5. I want to change it to one of these grid squares to be split up into 4, so they're 5 by 5 grids. To do that, you notice that this is going to look different for you if you don't have the virtual tabletop extension for Roll20 added in. Search for it, great add-in. But once you hit the page settings, it's going to be normal. We're going to change the cell width to 0.5. So that's going to mean that every grid is going to shrink these grids down, and every grid will still remain 5 feet. Grid cell will remain 5 feet. But now you can see we have multiple squares in here to make the grid. All right, so let's zoom in. And now what's interesting is I told it I wanted it to be 0.5, and you can see it's actually converted it to exactly that. We now have 4 squares going across, although that is no longer 10 feet. That now makes that 20 feet. Again, if we change this back to 1, that is at our 5 feet. So while the original map from the module was set to 10-foot squares, the artist already changed that out to make it be just 5-foot squares. All right, so that's our map. One thing that I'll do here real quick for you is I'm just going to go ahead and drag a token out here so you can kind of see what this actually does. Well, we're going to put a Spinosaur out here. How's that? Now, on the Spinosaur, I want to use dynamic lighting. Do not use the advanced lighting areas here now. Go to the new dynamic lighting tab. Give it vision. I'm going to actually make the bright light on this just because I want to show off quite a bit. I'm going to make this just be 90 feet. I'm not going to bother with low light right now, but low light is actually really cool. Now you can see nothing has changed here. I'm going to go back over to the settings for the map. I'm going to go back to dynamic lighting. I'm going to turn dynamic lighting on for the map. Now, Explorer mode, daylight mode, I'm going to leave those off for now. GM, darkness opacity, leave that at 35%. I like that. You can make it darker or lighter. The darker you make it, the more easy it will be for you to see what the characters actually see. So now you can see the Spinosaur here. As he's walking around through the dungeon, he's going to, and you know what I didn't do? I did not put him on the token layer. So I'm going to right click him, go to layer, token layer. I'm going to convert back over to the token layer. Now I've got the Spinosaur, and I'm going to move him around the map. And you can see those crosshairs on the pillars are giving you a view of a part of the pillar, but still blocking the line of sight directly opposite from where you are. Then when you come over to the doors, move the map over. And we will bring our friend up. You can see all the line of blocking is in place. And then when you get here and you, as the DM, want them to open that door, you go to the dynamic lighting layer, select the door you want to get rid of. Now, here is a problem, and I will go back and fix this later. But you see, it actually blended those two into a single line. I'm going to need to break that out later to make it so I can move just the one I want to move. Now, I want to go ahead. I can delete this. The characters can then see. Let's undo that. I can also grab this and just move it out of the way. And now the characters can see in there again. Although interesting, did I forget to remove that? No. So this is very interesting now. This is a little bit of a problem in that the line of sight blocking is no longer there in place, but it has not cleared. So I'm going to come up here and I'm going to go to dynamic line of sight, and I'm going to just try to remove this door. Okay, I just went ahead and deleted that. Let's put it back. I wonder if it's because I had deleted it first. If I just move that one out of the way. Again, there's some buggy things happening with Roll20 right now. And I'm going to try this door, and I'm not going to delete this one. I'm just going to move it out of the way. It's interesting on this. Okay, I move it out of the way, and then if I take and put it back, and then I move it out of the way again. All right, so it's something with deleting the door right now and then putting it back. I wonder if, move it out of the way, I'm going to hit Control Z. I'll move it out of the way. No, it's something with deleting and then returning the door. So don't delete them unless you would never want to put them back or want to draw a new line in. But that is the dynamic lighting on an existing map. If you have any questions, see down below. I'll put a link to the original video down below as well. And have a great day. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, constructive criticisms, please list that down below. And I will see you next time.